Hello Mech Warriors, this is Kyle again. The latest DLC pack has been released, giving us a total of 4 to choose from presently. Quick side note, if you're interested in learning more about the base game or the other 3 DLCs, then please consider watching my previous video. This latest one, The Rise of Rasalhague, adds a fair few features that make the galaxy feel more developed, but before we start digging into the DLC itself, I would like to take a moment to focus on what was freely added to the base game for all Mech Warriors to enjoy. The devs gave us a long list of improvements made to the AI across the board. The AI units now shoot more frequently, have a better targeting priority, and try their best to avoid destroying objectives that they ought to be defending. There is also better feedback when ordering AI lancemates around, so at least you know they heard your latest command. This list of improvements goes well past that, but I have to give my honest opinion here. From my perspective, I hate to admit it, but the improvements feel pretty minimal. I'll give credit where credit is due. Enemies feel tougher now that they seem to focus tearing off important pieces of my mech. I even want to say that my AI lancemates are doing more damage in missions. However, it really doesn't feel like we're much better off than we previously were. That's the important thing here. Game feel. I won't pretend to know what goes into making intelligent AI, and I have no reason to doubt that the devs worked hard to try and fix what they could. But at the end of the day, the stuff you're most likely to notice will involve friendly AI blocking your shots and nearly running into you, while enemies continue disregarding all common sense to make sure that they can get shots on you. I even spent a lot of time playing the new DLC with 2 friends. With how co-op works, that means that only one mech in our lance was controlled by the AI, and it still managed to inconvenience us repeatedly. On a more positive note, active mech bays on the dropship have been expanded from 12 to 40. This is a huge boon for a few key reasons. Previously, when you collected 12 mechs, you would have to start putting the extras into cold storage. That means that you throw it into a separate storage menu where everything is unequipped. If you want to play with that mech again, you have to go through the painstaking process of giving it guns, ammo, heat sinks, whatever. And then you have to wait several in-game days for your changes to finally go through. This system made sense in universe, but it meant that you could only have a total of 3 pre-planned lances of mechs at the ready. If you ever flew to a different area in space with different tonnage limits for your lance, then you'd likely have to swap things in and out of cold storage. Now, you don't need to worry about such things. Multiple mission operations are a breeze. You can prepare for them by having plenty of mechs and with a variety of options at your beck and call. Beyond that, the cold storage system is still useful. Every mech in an active bay costs money to upkeep. If you find your tri-monthly bills are getting too expensive, you don't have to sell your kidney, or worse, your favorite costly mech. You can throw them into cold storage to drop the price of your bills until you're ready to pull them out again. All in all, I'm glad they decided to drop this simulation-esque aspect of the game in order to enhance the game flow. It was really the right call. Lastly, they also gave a few quality of life changes. There's not much point in going down the list as these are pretty minor changes. Just know that the UI is a bit better, it's easier to get information from certain screens, and the gameplay experience is generally that little bit nicer. With all that out of the way, we can finally focus on the star of the show. What do you actually get when you steal your mom's credit card to buy DLC number 4, huh? Well, for the sake of time, I'm going to assume that you are familiar with the base game and previous DLCs. The newest pack, The Rise of Rasalhague, is the least focused of the DLC packs available. Put simply, it tries to add a little bit of everything. You might think that this means it gives you the most value for your money, but the lack of focus does impact the quality of what you get. The first thing of note in the DLC is the new story missions. The story is set around the Rasalhague Republic and its fight for freedom and recognition from the other great houses. It's worth noting that Rasalhague is not new to the game and can be found by either reaching a certain point in time during a normal playthrough, or you can directly start in their space from the career menu if you already own the Heroes of the Inner Sphere DLC. Rise of Rasalhague, which I'll call Rise from now on, is here to give us the opportunity to take an active role in Rasalhague's fight for freedom. Now, instead of watching the teal blob suddenly appear on the star map, you can become part of the reason that teal blob exists. Being the lore hound that I am, I appreciated the context of the battles and the character arcs throughout this little side story, but functionally, this is Kestrel Light. I still believe the devs deliver solid experiences when they plan out unique missions, and the missions present in Rise are no exception. Unfortunately, this aspect of the DLC is forced into a position where it stands in direct comparison with Kestrel. Both are quote-unquote hardcore campaigns, with set timelines that keep you on your toes. And I won't be keeping you waiting for this hot take. Kestrel does it better. That's not a knock against Rise per se, as the missions are fun, and the maps break away from the standard ones, and even the voice acting is alright. But if you've played Kestrel Lancers, then you'll probably be missing the set pieces and boss fights that made it so memorable. Rise has its own special twists, but again, nothing on Kestrel's level. Many missions in Kestrel Lancers stand out by having some maps substantially larger and more intricate than you'd ever find in normal play. Rise, on the other hand, loves canyons. You'll constantly be marching through canyons to reach objectives or cities, and it even gives you a massively important boss fight inside a slightly unique canyon. Let's just say I'm glad they offer more than just the story missions in this DLC pack. You can also get your hands on the new Crusader mech chassis. The base version of this beefy boy is a fire support mech that generally supports hardpoints for long-range missiles and backs them up with a handful of shorter-range armaments. It can pack a real punch and rain hellfire down on unsuspecting foes. Wait, I need to back up for a second. I should actually say that it has a handful of missiles backed up by other weapons. The base variant of this mech keeps its long-range missile racks on its hands. I haven't gone over the damage system in this game yet, so let me tell you why this placement is important. Each piece of your mech essentially has its own health bar. Once that health is depleted, the part is destroyed and dramatically falls off your mech. The only exceptions are really your core and cockpit. If either of those are destroyed, that essentially means instant death. Mech arms tend to be extremely vulnerable. Any damage coming in from the side usually goes right to the arms, and they can easily be targeted from the front or back. In short, the most important weapons on this chassis are in the most vulnerable places they could possibly be. While that is a distinct downside, don't write this mech off. As a fire support mech, you really don't want to be running the Crusader headlong into battle anyway. Since long-range missiles have a minimum range requirement, it's in your best interest to keep your enemies at a distance and ask if they've ever seen the rain. With proper positioning, you'll find that the Crusader can be a damage-dealing beast. It doesn't end there either. The Crusader is a versatile weapons platform. Depending on the variants you find in the galaxy, you can tool this bad boy out to suit any playstyle you like. Next, let's talk about the new mission type. Infiltration missions are added to the pool of randomly generated content that you'll stumble on throughout the universe. Let me tell ya, this is definitely the black sheep of the missions on offer. As the name implies, this is a stealth mission. Yeah, you heard that right. The smallest mechs in the game still dwarf houses, so how in the heck can anything here be considered stealthy? I don't know, but at least it's unique. Your goal is to slip through enemy territory undetected and get scans of hostile mechs to relay to your employer. There are also side objectives like rescuing captured mechs and such. If you're spotted by patrols of enemies, then you have a short window of time to destroy them before they sound the alarm and all hell breaks loose. I'll admit that I still haven't fully wrapped my head around the best way to get through these missions. Sometimes it seems like I should be detected, but no alarms go off. Other times I get spotted and I don't know how they saw me. I'm really not sure whether there's something up with the mission itself or my playstyle. I'm willing to bet that even Sam Fisher and Solid Snake would have trouble sneaking around in our multi-ton war machines. Don't get me wrong, I'm glad the devs are branching out and trying new things instead of reskinning old mission types again, but the rewards aren't any better than other missions, so I often find myself avoiding infiltration to do something else. I think part of the problem is the maps. It seems like there are more obstacles and terrain bits in these kind of maps to help you avoid being spotted by enemies, but even with all that, it's still a little too open. I know I complained about there being too many canyons in the new story missions, but if these infiltration missions used maps built with a spiderweb of canyons and clear patrol paths for enemies, then I think it would be a lot more fun. I guess I can also think of a few other ways to improve these missions without such elaborate changes, but no one's asking me and we're limited to what was actually released, so I'm gonna move on.
Here it is.
Closing in on your position.
The last edition is easily my favorite part of the new content, the rival mercenary system. In lore, mercenaries are commonplace. Tons of veteran mech pilots are happy to sell their skills to the highest bidder in a galaxy that never knows peace for long. Barring a few story missions, it really felt like your mercenary corps was the only group flying around and getting stuff done. Now at least the rest of the mercs are here to play too. You can see them scattered around the star map, doing the same kind of work you're doing. Better yet, if you fly into a zone they're working in, you can encounter them in the field. Each merc company signs up with one of the factions in the space it inhabits. Do a mission for the same faction they're working for, and they might come down to assist you mid-mission. But if you signed up for the faction they're working against, they'll call you out and send a lance down to try and thrash you.
Well, they're going to be a point-blank range with our... Jesus Christ.
It's a fun system. If you start beating the motor oil out of rival companies, then you'll be contacted by the enigmatic bounty hunter. The bounty hunter is a mysterious figure who is willing to give you C-bills and other gifts in exchange for information you retrieve while fighting other mercs. In lore, the bounty hunter is essentially a Dread Pirate Roberts figure who passes their legacy on every once in a while. Here, they're functionally acting like another faction to incentivize you to beat up other mercs. The incentive is strong though. You'll earn cash, tech, mechs, and even unique paint schemes reminiscent of really old school MechWarrior games. Let's wrap this up. Like I said earlier, this DLC is a compromise of mechanics. It makes the game feel wider without really adding much depth. This is somewhat offset by the DLC having a normal price of $15, thus it is cheaper than the deeper DLCs, which usually cost around $20. This leads us to the real question: should you buy it? Well, here's the thing. It's decent, but it wears its flaws on its sleeve. It's the first pack that seems to assume you own other DLC. If you've only got the base game, then the story missions here will feel like a massive time skip. Even if you own everything else, this pack still comes across as a mixed bag. The new story missions are fine, but they really aren't as memorable as what you'd get in Kestrel Lancers. The Crusader is a good mech for its tonnage, and I think it's fun to use, but everything it can do, some other mech can do just as well, if not better. Then there's Infiltration, which is in an odd spot. It feels like every game has some tacked-on stealth missions these days, so this must be appealing to somebody out there, but it's hard for me to enjoy these kind of missions in their current state. Next, I mentioned that I enjoy the rival mercenary mechanic, but I should also mention that it's not a terribly deep system. It essentially alters the difficulty of a mission by adding more friends or enemies depending. At the very least, it feels rewarding to be on either side of the conflict. You earn way more money from missions that have hostile mercs, and you also get the aforementioned goodies from the bounty hunter by giving them a 4-story pimp slap. Inversely, if the rival mercs are friendly to you, then you can get some backup to make the mission easier. It's not a huge functional change, but the presentation is great. I like hearing the musical crescendo and getting some personal message from my rival that sounds like it was delivered by an anime antagonist. Each rival merc company has a different opinion of you. Some respect your skills, others just want you out of the way. Whatever the case, it makes the galaxy feel less barren. As a whole, this DLC didn't make the huge sweeping additions that some fans were hoping for, but it offers some fun novelties. $15 feels a little steep for what you're getting, but I wouldn't say that it's outright bad. Any sale that drops this pack to $10 or less would immediately make it worth it in my book, but since it's relatively new, we may have to wait a while for that. Anyway, I hope I gave you enough information to decide if Rise is right for you. Until next time, this is Kyle again, signing off. Alright. I'd like to give a big thank you to everyone who made it this far in the video, and an even bigger shout out to all of you wonderful people who have been leaving me some feedback on my previous videos. Honestly, I was floored to have received so much positivity. It does my heart good to know that some people seem to really enjoy my content, and the constructive criticism I've received really does help with my own introspection about my own work. So, seriously, thank you all. Now, there are a few things I'd like to say before we call it a day. Firstly, I tried really hard not to spoil anything in the campaign missions for this DLC, and that led to a few problems. There were some gameplay mechanics I didn't talk about because they'd had ties to the story, and it did put me in a bit of an awkward position. The story itself, while not the greatest ever written, did keep me interested enough to finish it, and I thought that spoiling too much could ruin the experience for other players. If I do anything like this in the future, I think I'll have to add a spoiler section so I can properly say everything I want to say. Second, let's talk about the future of my channel. Progress on Kyle's Merc Academy has been slow for a number of reasons, but I still fully intend to make it, so don't worry, it's still on the way. I'm also going to start branching out again. There are plenty of games out there, and I'm already making a list of things that I want to look into. If you have any suggestions for future game reviews, then feel free to shout them out in the comments below. With all that out of the way, let's wrap this up for real. If you enjoyed this video, then please consider giving it a like. Feel free to comment with your thoughts. And subscribe if you're interested in seeing more of what I have to offer. And this is Kyle again, signing off.